Hey guys, how's everyone doing? So I've had a lot of requests lately asking how I build maps or what it takes to build a map. So I figured I'd start this little series just giving an example of how I use the editor, and maybe people can pick up a few tips and tricks from that. So the first thing I decided is I'm just going to build a small river scenario here and give everyone a bit of an example of what it takes to make stuff in the editor. So the first thing we want to do is get rid of this autumn type ground. I much prefer a summer level myself, a little more pleasant to drive around in. So we're going to open up our terrain. We're going to go to PBR terrain materials, and we're going to select that. So each material has 4 layers that we can use, which a layer is essentially a different texture of ground. So dirt, rocks, grass, whatever you really want to put down. So we're going to pick our layer 1. We're going to change it from default to Grass Russia 01, which gives a nice green look out there. Already looks more pleasant. So the next thing we want to do is we're going to add a dirt layer. We're going to use Ground Russia 01. So this just gives us the ability to paint a little dirt over the grass if we want. And then for our third layer, I'm going to select the Gravel Russia 01, which again, this is just going to give us the ability to paint some gravel over the grass. So now that we've selected our PBR layers, we need to set the tiling scale on them. You notice each tile, there's one tile in each square, so it's not very small or detailed right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to select our material, we're going to go to tiling scale, and we're going to change that to 5, which is essentially going to put a lot more of those little squares in each big square and just give it a little more detailed look. So for the ground, we're going to do the same, and we're going to give it a 5 tiling scale. And then for the rocks, I like to use 3.5. Gives the rocks a good natural looking size, and we'll probably end up using the rocks in the riverbed. Okay, so we got all our PBR materials set up. Now we want to make this look like a river. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our geometry tool, our height tool, and we're going to move the brush up to about 30. We'll leave the value at a little over 2 and the fall off at 75, and we're just going to pull up a little bit of ground to set the height for a riverbed. So the quickest way to move ground in this editor, I find, is to use the flat tool. So we're going to switch to that. We're going to leave a brush at 30. Value we'll leave at 50, and we'll put the fall off down around 30. We're just going to use this height for our riverbed. So we're going to take it, we're going to make the river meander, because most rivers aren't nice and straight. Give a little character to it. And just paint with the flatten tool all the way around. We'll add a little contour to this world soon. So then we're going to cheat that across. And we'll just do the same thing down the other side. Give it some natural meandering to the river. And then now we just want to go up on our brush size a bit, and we're just going to fill in the sides around the river. Make it look a little more natural. So you can see those white squares everywhere. Those are basically our start height. So it gives you an idea of how much ground you've moved. And we know everything with those white squares is perfectly level. So we're just going to fill in these sides a bit. And then what we'll do is we're going to clean out that little spot in our river. Just make it so that it's back to a riverbed. So we'll move our brush down. We're going to keep with the flattened brush, and we'll just get our height off the riverbed. And erase that little spot here. And there we go, we got the start of a river. So if you like, you can come down, just bring everything down to those white squares so we know it's all flat. Let it rebuild. And there we go, we got a start. So the next thing we want to do is we're going to add some water to this river. It seems like a pretty important part. So in the editor, every water body is considered a river. It's just how you lay it out. So we're going to select river. We're going to get one with two nodes, 0 and 1. A river will naturally flow from 0 to 1, but we can adjust that flow any way we want, so it really doesn't matter which way you put it. So we want to start it off the map there in the side, and we're going to move node 1 up there. So a big thing with rivers is if you have river overlays that overlap each other, it glitches the water out pretty bad. So we want to make sure that we only use as much area as we need with a river overlay. Otherwise you're going to run into problems. So we're a little high in the river bank, so we're going to bring it down to a height we want, which is dictated by your position Y. So now to make sure that both our starting nodes are the same, we're going to copy that. We're going to go to our first 0 node, put that in the Y property, hit enter, and that just gives us a nice flat river to start. So now we're going to select this node 1. You can use this to add a node, but I find when you select the river with the node, a lot of times you'll select models with it and around the map. It gets pretty annoying. So as a rule now, I always select over here, and we're just going to put add after. And we're just going to work our river along. I'm just going to move this node over a bit just to center the water a bit. So I'll select node 2, right click, add after. We're coming out of our riverbank a bit so we can just bring it down, and it's going to give it a natural down slope to the river anyways. So back to node 3, add after. You gotta watch corners. If you make things too sharp with the rivers, you'll get kind of a glitched out inside corner as the overlay runs into itself, basically. So we got 5. Add one more. Basically every corner you want to have a node somewhere around the middle, if not 2 or 3, to give yourself a nice smooth corner. So we're just going to run that off the map. And done. So now we have the start of a river. And you can see the edge of the overlay sticking out here, so we're going to have to bring up the riverbank a bit. So we'll go back to our flatten tool. And we'll just catch a height and bring it across. Make sure we clean all these spots up a little bit. And now we have a somewhat functioning river. So then at this point, it looks pretty plain. Now the next part I'm going to do is we're going to add some banks on each side of it. Keep in mind when you're building, water typically will find its way back to a river, so we're going to want the water to contour back towards the river. So when we build hills, we're going to make a small valley essentially. So we're going to go to our geometry tool again. We're going to put it up around 50. We'll put this up to about 4, and we'll leave our fall off at 75. Now we're just going to click our way through here, and we're just going to put some hills in. If you click and hold, it acts like a flatten tool, and it doesn't really give you a very good lift on the ground, so you're going to want to click your way through this. And again, it doesn't have to be pretty. We're going to do a lot more to this to make it look more natural in the future, but right now we're just giving ourselves a little better view of what we're building, and I find it helps inspire me a bit more. giving a general layout, trying to work off a completely flat ground that just doesn't look real at all. So we'll come through here. Basically, just a quick rough in. The ground usually isn't very flat, and there's really no method to it. The more random, the better. So we'll click off that, and now we got a little bit of a river valley started, which is looking a little bit better already. So the next part now, to add a little more ambience to it and inspire me a bit more, I'll typically add a distribution, which is trees, bushes, all that kind of fun stuff. So we're going to right click, we're going to go to add distribution, and we're going to go down and pick what brushes we want to use, add to our distribution. So because we're in a nice summer map, we're going to use stuff with the prefix RUS, Russia, at the end. So we have regular aspens and we have aspens Russia. Regular aspens are going to be an autumn type color, where anything with the rush prefix will be nice green summer stuff. So we're going to add aspens and we're going to add some birches. Click OK. Now we need to save this in the game file, so we're going to click right there, and we're going to write DSTR underscore. I'm going to name it trees, but you can name it whatever you want, and then .tga. Enter. Oh, I must have typed it wrong. Let's try that again. So DSTR underscore trees .tga. There we go. So now we have it saved in the game files, and we can reuse this distribution many times. So I usually use a brush around 3, value at 80, fall off down at 0, because we want the trees to go right where we're putting them. We're just going to randomly paint just a few trees. This isn't going to be our final product, but it just helps sell the level a bit while you're building it. Gives you a little better view on what you're doing. So absolutely random. More random the better, really, because a forest, unless humans have planted it, is pretty random at the best of times. So I'll just keep scooting around. So now we're going to let it rebuild, and we'll see that we have trees. Now everything's pretty much the same size, which also doesn't look very natural. So we're going to want to go back in. We're going to want to go to scale. We're going to go up to about 80 for the value. Fall off back to 0 when you're painting, because you want stuff to place where you place it. We're just going to do a real random paint of the scale, which essentially anything in this green color I'm painting is going to be bigger than the stuff that isn't. I'm just going to do just a real rough color over it. We'll let it rebuild. And now we got a little more variety. But we can do better than that. So we're going to go back in to scale again. We're going to put it down to 14. We're just going to go across everything we did the opposite direction. Just give it some tiny scaling, and that should add a lot more variety to the size of trees that we have, which in this end is just going to make it look more natural. So again, still looking pretty plain. So the next thing we're going to want to do is let's add another distribution with some bushes. So again, add distribution. Go down here and we're going to pick what brushes we want. So again, we're going to use anything. Make sure that it's prefixed rush at the end. So I'm looking for small trees, Russia, right there. And you know what? We'll put a little fern in with that too. So we have ferns, Russia. So we have, oops, wrong one. We need bushes, Russia. So we have bushes, Russia, ferns, Russia, small trees, Russia. OK. Save this in the game file. So again, dstr underscore bush dot tga. Boy, I'm having a tough time typing that today. dstr underscore bush dot tga. Excellent. Now we're saved in the game. So again, we're going to put our value back up to around 80, fall off 0. That scale, so try density. And we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to give it some random bushes around. Things won't spawn underwater if you don't have it set. I'll show you in a minute. So if you do get it under the river, it isn't a huge deal. And we can erase that out of there anyways after. So we're just going to do an absolute random painting. Again, same as the trees, we want to give some scaling to it. So we'll start big. Random scale. And then we'll do the same on the lower end, around 14 brush. And again, I do it the opposite direction just to break up lines. And let's load it up. So now we got some patchy bushes. We got some trees. Still not looking very good though. So we're going to add just a few more trees and we're going to bring them down a little bit closer to the river. So switch over to density. And just absolutely random. It doesn't have to be any method to it. You'll find what works for you. So that's probably pretty good. Let's bring it down. So what we're going to do now is we're going to rebuild the level, which is going to build some shadows and so on into the level. So I'm going to save. I'm going to right click, rebuild terrain. It's a small map, so it'll only take a few seconds. On a full-size map, this will take 2 or 3 minutes at least to rebuild a map that way. So now we've got shadows. So the next thing we want to do is add a little flow to the river, because right now we just have a long lake basically. So we're going to go into geometry, pick water, go down to speed, and big brush, because we're not going to get very intricate now. And we're just going to paint some flow into the river. So like I said, naturally the river's going to flow, start at 0 and head towards the higher nodes, but we can flip that around if we like later on. So we painted our speed, do that, and now we have some flow to the river. And you can see it kind of follows the riverbed, but not perfectly, so we'll play with that later. So the next thing we want to do is we're going to put a riverbed in. So we're going to go to our PBR, we're going to go to gravel. I'm going to use a bigger brush. We'll set our value to 80, fall off to 0 because we want it to paint right up to the edge, and we're just going to start with a shot right down the middle. And we'll worry about the edges in a second. So now we have a basic rocky riverbed. So we're going to bring our brush down at probably 9. And we'll just come up the sides of the river. And we'll just give it a little edge of rock. I like to show a little bit of grass, a little bit of rock at the edge of the riverbed. Give it that natural kind of watered look. I mean, the river's going to rise and flow, so it really depends, but whatever you like. A steep riverbank like that side, you may want to put a little bit more, where a flat one like this, you may want almost a grass at the edge. and really up to you. One other thing you can do when you're edging is put your fall off up a bit, and it'll kind of lightly feather rocks onto your grass, so it gives you kind of a mix of PBRs, which can be pretty pleasing too. So just finish up the side, get a more natural look. We're going to save it. Okay, so now definitely looking more rippery. So the next thing we want to do is we're going to add some rocks. So we're going to go to distribution again, open it up. We're going to pick what we want. So we're going to pick small rocks. We're going to pick small rocks forest. So I like the variety. 2 different colored rocks gives a little more natural feel. So again, we're going to go save it. DSTR underscore rock.tga. Enter. So now we got it saved. So when I lay down rocks, the first thing I do is I go to scale and I scale everything as small as possible. And everywhere we're going to put rocks, we're going to paint the smallest scale we can. We're just going to do the riverbed for now. So then we're going to go back to density. We're going to do about a 60. And we're going to bring a big brush, about a 30 for brush size. Fall off can be probably about 30 or 40. A little bigger brush. And we're just going to lightly tap the rocks in. Rocks can get out of hand really quick if you paint them with any sort of value, so we just want to be light on it. And the next thing we need to do is ignore water so that those rocks will spawn in our river. So we'll go ahead and hit enter, and we should have a few tiny little rocks laying around. Not much. So then what we're going to do, we'll put a little bit more down. And we're going to go to scale. Go down to about 2. Or scale up to about 60. Fall off 0. And we're just going to paint some random sizing on there. And if we hit enter, we should see some slightly bigger rocks kicking around. But we have these weird lines. So we'll fix that up later. We're going to select that again. We're going to go to scale, and we're going to actually go up to about 80. And this time we're just going to, we want some really big rocks. So we're going to randomly paint some big ones. The key with the rocks is too many big ones is just annoying. So you kind of want to have a variety. So basically do that. Then we're going to take this brush and we're going to put it all the way down to 10. And we're just going to paint with the small scale and break up the lines of the rocks so they look a little more natural. Boom. And we're going to save it. Rebuild the level again quickly. And we'll see what we got. Again, this is pretty quick on such a small map. The bigger maps do take a lot of time. So now we've added rocks all the way down the sides, a little bit of natural. Okay guys, I think we'll come back to this again in a couple days, but that's a good start to figure out what's going on with the map editor. Anyways, any questions or any suggestions, put them down in the comments. Hit a like and come back for the next one. Thanks guys.